I'm Ariana Wells, 30 years old, and I never saw my life twisting into this knot. I once believed family was a safe harbor. Instead, I watched my mother steer my fiancé toward my older sister. Years later, at my own milestone party, I saw their jaws drop the moment they met my husband. But let me start at the beginning. I grew up in a brick bungalow outside Atlanta, shuttered windows, proud azaleas, a freshly painted porch. On the surface, we looked ordinary. Inside, my mother, Monica, ran the house with a velvet-gloved iron fist. She greeted neighbors with syrupy smiles and then critiqued them over martinis the second they left. My father, Gregory, was quieter. He'd smile at Monica's jabs, but never challenge her. His peacekeeping made him gentle, too gentle, to stop the way she favored my sister Elise. Elise was 4 years older than me. At 34, she had my mother's golden hair, her smile, and her taste for limelight. She won beauty contests in high school, then landed magazine shoots. Every minor triumph drew Monica's thunderous applause. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one. I buried myself in design portfolios, taught myself 3 coding languages by 16, and spent summers sketching user interfaces in my treehouse. None of it impressed my mother. "Design is a hobby, Ariana," she'd say. "Won't put food on your table." Meanwhile, she'd gush to friends about Elise's latest modeling gig. My father tried to cushion each slight with a gentle pat on the shoulder. "Your mom means well," he'd whisper. But the look in his eyes said he knew how wrong it was. High school was a battlefield of backhanded compliments. When I landed first place in a statewide art competition, Monica cooed, "That's nice, dear," and immediately asked Elise about her next photo shoot. She'd post on Facebook proud of my gorgeous golden girl, complete with 1,000 heart emojis. I learned early that my achievements were footnotes in our family story. So I stopped bragging. I packed my scholarships and acceptance letters, quietly applying only to schools at least 3 states away. When MIT called, I felt relief, not just excitement. At college in Boston, everything changed. For the first time, people valued my ideas. I made a best friend, Maya Patel, over a shared love of late-night coding sessions. "You deserve applause," she insisted one evening when I confessed how I dreaded spring break. "Your life sounds like a reality show no one invited me to watch." I laughed, then wondered if I'd been too numb to notice the dysfunction at home. Over the years, I visited for holidays less and less. When I did, it felt like stepping into a play I no longer understood. My style, my dreams. Even my laughter struck my mother as odd. I'd catch Elise's smirk from across the table, as Monica seized every chance to remind me I was cold or too intense. That changed the first time I pushed back. During winter break of senior year, Monica frowned at my jeans and sweater combo and said, "You might try looking more presentable." I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I'm comfortable like this, Mom." The silence that followed was delicious. She stormed out of the room. For the first time, I felt like a woman who could set her own terms. And then I met Ryan Carter. He was 28, 2 years younger, presenting at an MIT Tech Expo. His startup used augmented reality to make museum tours interactive. He spoke with an easy confidence, technical, without the usual arrogance. When he asked for feedback on the app's menu design, I offered a few suggestions. He didn't just nod politely. He fired up his laptop-coded changes on the spot and asked for more ideas. We ended up in a coffee shop until closing, swapping stories about code comics and childhood dreams. His dark eyes lit up when he laughed. I was smitten. Soon we were meeting for weekly design critiques that drifted into dinners. He soaked up every idea I had. He valued my input. And I, for the first time, felt truly seen. Spring of senior year, I invited him home. Part of me wanted to flaunt my amazing boyfriend. Part of me hoped Monica would finally see my worth. The visit began well. Dad grilled Ryan on his business plan and asked thoughtful questions. Monica served her finest pot roast. Even Elise seemed courteous, exchanging polite greetings. Then Elise arrived fashionably late, clutching a toddler pink purse that matched her heels. She beelined for Ryan, draping her arm around his shoulder in a showy hug. "So you're the genius who's stolen our little Ariana's attention." She laughed, her voice honey that stung. She leaned in close. I noticed Ryan stiffen, but recover quickly. He introduced Elise to her father as Ryan and me, as Ariana, his fiancée. My chest tightened. Throughout dinner, Elise punctuated every topic with her own anecdotes and shared interests, hiking though she'd gone only once for a shoot, sushi though she turned her nose up at raw fish. Indie films though she'd never stay awake past the opening credits. When she claimed she and Ryan both loved urban sketching, he glanced at me with a faint smile before adding, "She's actually one of my favorite collaborators. She completely nails the wireframes I struggle with." My mother cleared her throat. "Elise did consider marketing, didn't you?" She purred, eyes fixed on Ryan. "Before you switched majors," Elise blurted. "Yes, I nearly majored in marketing, but I changed when I realized—" Her words tumbled into a half-truth about her grades. I stayed silent, watching Ryan's polite nods. The weekend ended on cordial notes. Ryan told me afterward, "Your family is something. I'm impressed how you handled everything." I forced a laugh. Dallas Cowboys fans would seem tame compared to those two. He grinned. "Your dad's great. Your mom? Well, she's an experience." That night, as we drove back to Boston, Ryan squeezed my hand. "I've been thinking," he said softly. "After graduation, would you consider joining my team? You're exactly the partner I need." My heart thudded. I imagined our future designing together, building something real. At that moment, the pain of my childhood seemed miles away, but I didn't know then how quickly that dream would shatter. The warning signs were there, in the quick glances, the forced smiles, the way mom's praise for Elise always felt like an auction. I believed in us. I believed in me. I was about to learn how fragile both can be. I thought everything was perfect until the morning texts stopped arriving. Ryan once pinged me at dawn with a goofy gif. Now days would pass before I heard from him. Our nightly video calls became infrequent. Our shared playlist went untouched. I blamed final stress and investor meetings. He said his startup was on the brink of something big, but my gut tightened each time I saw his name flash on my phone without a message attached. One Saturday afternoon, I scrolled through my feed and froze at a photo, a quaint cafe on the outskirts of Atlanta, framed by oak trees in bloom. In the corner of the shot, I recognized Ryan's laptop bag. He'd told me he was in Seattle raising funds. Atlanta was opposite that. I confronted him that evening. His laughter sounded brittle when he spun a story about a detour to meet a potential investor's friend. He claimed he didn't want to worry me during midterms. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But I couldn't shake the unease, so during spring break, I surprised him with a visit home. I arrived unannounced at his loft in Boston, suitcase in hand, heart racing with excitement. No car in the driveway. His studio was dark and empty, the notes I left on his desk unanswered. Every corner felt hollow. Hoping for answers, I drove to his company's warehouse 3 hours away. No car there either, just his partner Evan locking up for the day. When I asked where Ryan was, Evan looked puzzled. "He took some personal time," he said. "Something about family." He offered a polite but confused sympathy before slipping inside. My heart pounded as I drove home in a daze. When I pulled up to my parents' house at 10 that night, Dad's Yukon and Mom's Prado were in the driveway. I parked behind them and crept to the front door, every step echoing in the stillness. I heard low voices through the living room window. I pressed my ear to the pane and recognized Ryan's voice, soft and tentative, and then Elise's laughter, bright and invasive. I peered inside. Ryan sat on the couch leaning toward Elise, her hand resting on his knee. Monica, seated in her favorite wingback, leaned forward with a conspiratorial grin. "You two understand each other in ways Ariana never could," she was saying. "She's brilliant, but she lives in a world of code. Elise knows how to connect, network, and host the right events. You need someone who can navigate the spotlight." My chest ached. "Stop," Ryan murmured, pulling back slightly. Elise pouted. "I'm just trying to help you both." I flung the door open. Silence swallowed the room. Ryan's eyes widened. Elise's hand flew from his knee. Monica's mask cracked. "Ariana!" Ryan stammered. "I can explain." I ignored the word. "How long?" His gaze dropped. "A few months," he confessed. I felt my heart fracture. "Did you ever plan to tell me?" He looked ashamed. "I didn't know how." My mother rose with false concern. "We only discussed your future," she sputtered. "Isn't it normal for a mother to guide her daughter?" I laughed, a hollow, painful sound. "You manipulated him behind my back." You set me up to fail so Elise could succeed. Don't be dramatic, Monica snapped. I was practical. Elise needed security more than you did. Words blurred as I grabbed my keys and ran. I heard Dad's soft apology drift from the hallway. I had no time to hear it. I got in my car and drove until tears blurred my vision. I ended up on Maya's couch in Boston. When she answered at 2 a.m., I collapsed in her arms, sobbing. It's worse than I thought, I admitted between tears. He betrayed me and so did my family. Maya held me tight. I'm here. You don't have to survive this alone. The next weeks passed in a haze. I couldn't code, couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I withdrew from my capstone, withdrew from life. Maya begged me to see a therapist. I resisted until I realized staying numb was worse than feeling pain. I found Dr. Chen, whose quiet strength and gentle questions began to unravel the tangle of guilt, anger, and heartbreak. Your family's betrayal runs deep, she told me at our first session, but you get to choose what comes next. Weeks of therapy helped me breathe again. I discovered that grief has its own timeline, not mine. I learned that running away a temporary fix can lead to real growth when you face what hurts. I set boundaries with my family, no calls, no visits, no social media. It was painful but necessary. By summer, I withdrew from MIT and transferred my credits to Georgia Tech, closer to home, but far enough to protect my progress. I surprised myself with relief. I started rebuilding a part-time internship at a design firm, yoga, to calm my mind, weekend hikes with Maya, to remind me the world still held beauty. One afternoon, cleaning out old notebooks, I found my first sketch of Ryan's app interface doodles scrawled with hope. I paused. The future I dreamed with him was over, but I still loved design. I had the talent, the fire, and the resiliency to rebuild my dreams on my own terms. I closed the notebook with a sense of calm. Betrayal had shattered my illusions, but it couldn't crush my truths. I was worthy of trust, worthy of love, and worthy of my own success. I arrived at Georgia Tech with a mix of apprehension and determination. The sprawling campus felt familiar enough, but my heart carried old scars. I immersed myself in UX design classes, each lecture revealing new truths about how people think and interact. My first assignment was rebuilding the student portal. I sketched wireframes late into the night and tested prototypes on classmates. When Dr. Rosen, my professor, spoke of my work as elegant and user-centric, I felt a spark of the girl I used to be. At my part-time internship, I joined Nova & Comey, a boutique studio led by Douglas Hart, a mentor whose belief in my skill patched cracks in my confidence. He handed me a freelance project redesigning the website of a local art collective. Meeting the artists reminded me how creation can heal. They spoke of community collaboration and hope. Their passion reignited my own. Douglas encouraged me to organize a workshop. Tentatively, I booked a small room in the student union and invited students to learn basic UI principles. 15 people showed up, more than I expected. They asked questions. They sketched with enthusiasm. They told me later how the workshop helped them on other assignments. I realized teaching could be as rewarding as designing. Meanwhile, I found solace in a campus group called Women in Tech. Every Thursday evening, we gathered in a converted lab with bright posters and leftover pizza. Lila, a senior in computer engineering, led our discussions on career paths and imposter syndrome. She shared her own journey, from a shy freshman to a confident project lead at a major firm. Her honesty resonated in my chest. I volunteered to co-host a hackathon. We called it Ignite. It was a small event, 24 hours, a handful of teams. Yet watching strangers become collaborators reminded me that trust and creativity can flourish in moments of shared purpose. My team built a prototype app to help students find quiet study spots. When judges awarded us second place, my heart swelled with pride in something untainted by family drama. Friendships deepened too. I met Marcus, an industrial design major, who favored hand sketches over screen mock-ups, and Zoe, a marketing student with a wicked sense of humor. We joined forces for late-night study sessions and impromptu museum trips on weekends. Marcus introduced me to his father's woodshop, where I learned to shape metal and wood not for code, but for tangible creation. Zoe dragged me to poetry slams, where I realized language could flow like code with rhythm and precision. I also discovered mindfulness through Sarah's yoga classes. Her voice guided me through breathwork that quelled the noise in my mind. Each exhale carried away doubt. Each inhale reminded me I was alive, whole, and capable of new beginnings. By midsummer, my freelance work had grown into a small client list. I launched Arcadia Designs, a brand that felt like mine, a name inspired by simple beauty and community. I built a website, created a logo, and sent cold emails to local startups. Some didn't reply. A few offered small contracts. My first paid job under my own name came from a health consultancy needing a dashboard redesign. When they praised the clarity and warmth of my layouts, I realized that I was building more than interfaces. I was rebuilding my own narrative. One evening, I sat on the roof of my apartment building, Atlanta's skyline glowing around me. I pulled out my old sketchbook. The pages where I'd once drawn Ryan's app designs now felt like relics. I traced a finger over a drawing and felt no bitterness, only gratitude for the lessons that pain had taught me. I closed the sketchbook, rolled my shoulders back, and let a smile form. I had found my rhythm again. I had reclaimed my voice. The horizon stretched before me, full of possibility and light. A week after I tapped yes on that LinkedIn invite, I stood backstage at the Emerging Women in Tech conference, lights humming overhead, and my heart shaking like a leaf. Yet the same voice in my head that once stuttered through every presentation now steadied me with each measured breath. When they called my name, I walked onto the stage and saw hundreds of faces waiting for my story. I began with shattered trust and betrayal, then traced my path through grief to reclamation and purpose, and I watched as heads nodded, eyes glistened, and pens raced in notebooks. The standing ovation felt surreal, but I welcomed it as proof that pain can be sculpted into power. Backstage, I let myself smile for the first time in months until my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was my mother. "Your father collapsed last night. He's stable but in surgery. We need you home." My chest clenched. Atlanta felt both worlds away and all too close. I swallowed hard, called Maya to cover my evening debrief, and booked the earliest flight south. On the plane, I stared at the city lights dwindling beneath me, memories of home rushing back porch swings. Dad's soft chuckle when I exploded a broken widget. Mom's gentle scolding that always felt too sharp. At Hartsfield, the humid air hit me like a wave. My rental car's GPS blinked 17 miles to home. My hands shook on the wheel. I tried to steady my breathing, remembering Sarah's yoga cues: inhale compassion, exhale fear. But the road to my parents' house felt impossible. At the front door, I paused the old welcome mat, worn but familiar, under my sneakers. I knocked and entered quietly. Dad's bed sat by the window, sunlight pooling on pale blankets. He looked smaller, frailer. His eyes flickered with relief when he saw me. "Ari," he whispered. I knelt beside him, took his hand, felt both home and heartbreak. Mom hovered at the door, her posture stiff, her eyes unreadable. Elise stood behind her, cheeks flushed, arms crossed like a shield. An electric tension crackled in the air, the old currents of favoritism and betrayal pulsing between us. I could keep walking away, could turn toward Dad and shut them out. But I remembered Dr. Chen's words. You choose what role they play. So I rose, offered a steady nod to each of them, and let the past and present collide in the same room. Shadows of every wrong decision hovered in that silent space, but my feet stayed planted on the faded rug. I drew in a slow breath and prepared to speak first to Dad, then to Mom, then to Elise, with all the strength I'd rebuilt. I knelt beside his bed, his frail hand resting in mine, the steady beep of the monitor marking each precious breath. The sunlight slanted through the blinds, painting pale stripes across the hospital sheets. I felt the weight of years in my chest, years of unspoken anger, buried grief, and silent longing. When he opened his eyes and offered a weak smile, I realized how much I had missed being simply his daughter. I turned and saw Mom lingering in the doorway. Her posture, stiff lips pressed in a line I remembered from a lifetime of criticism. Elise hovered behind her, arms crossed, eyes downcast. For a heartbeat, I thought of retreating to the safety I had built in Boston, the workshops, the hackathons, the friends who kept me from sinking. But then I heard my own voice calm and clear. I came because he's my father and I love him. I want him to know that nothing will take that away. Mom's lips trembled. Elise blinked upward as if surprised to find me still standing. I squeezed Dad's hand and spoke to Mom. I need to understand why you did it, why you convinced him that my future didn't matter. She swallowed hard. I was afraid you'd never marry, never have stability. I thought I was protecting you. Her confession landed like a stone. By betraying my trust and his, I said softly, you taught me that safety comes not from love, but from manipulation. Elise stepped forward, voice shaking. I never wanted to hurt you, Ari. Mom pressured me. I was scared she'd hate me if I said no. I saw tears bloom in her eyes. Tears of regret, of shame I once felt myself. You could have spoken up. You and I could have faced her together. She nodded, words caught in her throat. I inhaled deeply, gathering the strength I had cultivated over months of therapy and late-night coding sessions. I'm not here to punish you, I said to Elise. I'm here to decide how you will exist in my life going forward. Mom's gaze flickered between us. I turned back to Dad. I want to be with you while you heal, Dad, but I can't pretend the past didn't happen. He squeezed my hand, tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have protected you. I wiped my own eyes, feeling the tension in my chest loosen. Thank you for saying that. I looked at Mom. I forgive you in part. I forgive the possibility of reconciliation, not the betrayal. You'll have to earn my trust again. She nodded, her shoulders sagging, as if relief and regret mingled in that small movement. Then I faced Elise. I don't know what our sisterhood looks like now, but I want the chance to find out. She offered a shaky smile, one sibling to another. In that moment, the hospital room felt expansive, as if walls and past grievances had dissolved. Later, while Dad rested, Mom and Elise hovered uncertainly. I invited them to sit. The three of us mother-sisters talked quietly about Dad's surgery, the small comforts he would need, and the weight of choices made in fear. I guided the conversation toward healing, setting boundaries, checking in honestly, and seeking family counseling should they choose. Mom's defenses faded under the light of our shared concern. Elise vowed to find her own path independent of Mom's shadow. As I left that evening to return to my apartment in Atlanta, I felt both sadness for the brokenness and hope for what remained. I kissed Dad's forehead, promising to be back soon, and Mom and Elise joined me at the door. We stood in silence, three women connected by blood and mistakes. I whispered, "It's a start." Next morning, I rose before dawn and drove back to Boston, the eastern sky soft with sunrise. On the highway, I reflected on how confronting old wounds had peeled away layers of pain, leaving raw truth behind. I realized that forgiveness isn't a destination, but a process, one that begins with acknowledging hurt and choosing whether to let it define you. As I merged onto I-85, I felt a new resolve. My life was mine to shape. My family was no longer a prison, but a garden, where with careful tending, even fractured roots could sustain blossoms of understanding. I laid my suitcase by the entryway and poured a cup of coffee, letting the steam carry away the traces of hospital antiseptic, the tight ache of betrayal, and the fragile hope that had taken root in Atlanta. I opened my laptop and dove into Arcadia Designs, reviewing client feedback and drafting proposals for a new mobile interface that blended empathy and efficiency. My calendar filled with meetings, a brainstorming session with Marcus to explore tactile prototyping in virtual environments, a strategy call with Zoe to refine our marketing pitch for the upcoming Women in Tech panel, and a design review with Douglas Hart, whose thoughtful critiques continued to sharpen my vision. Between deadlines, I carved out time to reconnect with Dr. Chen, my therapist, and she reminded me that healing isn't an achievement, but a daily choice. I nodded as I walked to campus for our next workshop, feeling the weight of my story transformed into something yet malleable, neither burden nor blueprint, but material for the life I was building. When I co-hosted our second Ignite hackathon, I watched with pride as participants formed teams around diverse ideas. an app to help non-English speakers navigate public transportation, a platform for trauma survivors to find peer support, and a sustainability tracker for small businesses. Their enthusiasm reminded me that design like reconciliation thrives when we listen first and then build together. Amid this momentum, I realized a final reckoning with my family could no longer be postponed. I drafted an invitation to a community showcase where Arcadia Designs would present our most meaningful projects: the health consultancy dashboard, the art collective website, and the student portal redesign. I extended special invites to Mom and Elise, my heart pounding as I clicked send. When they replied with cautious acceptance, I felt both fear and relief spool through my veins. In the weeks leading up to the showcase, I curated each exhibit. Like a path home, I placed the health dashboard front and center with a short narrative about empathy and design. I lined the art collective site beside images of the children whose voices had reignited my own. And I screened a demo of the portal beside my earliest sketches, remnants of the girl who had once fled her own house to build shelter out of code. On the evening of the event, the gallery lights glowed warm against the brick walls, and colleagues gathered around plush benches to celebrate our collective work. I welcomed visitors with steady calm, introducing each project not as finished masterpieces, but as living invitations to collaboration. As the crowd thickened, I heard the soft click of the front door and turned to see Mom and Elise standing together, looking smaller in their carefully chosen dresses than I remembered. Mom's eyes drifted across the displays, lingering on the narrative panels that spoke of my journey through grief to growth. Elise studied the projection of the student portal, her forehead creased in concentration. I approached with Marcus at my side, Zoe offering her bright grin behind me, and Douglas standing by the health dashboard, arms crossed in quiet pride. I slipped an arm through Mom's and glanced at Elise. "Thank you for coming," I said softly, my voice carrying the calm of months spent building rather than escaping. Mom nodded, and her eyes glistened with an unfamiliar shimmer of humility. She ran a fingertip along the edge of the art collective poster, reading aloud the line, "Design is the bridge between hearts." "You believe this," she said, almost to herself. I smiled. "I do." Elise stepped forward, voice hushed. "Ari, I'm sorry I let Mom pressure me. I didn't speak up when it mattered. I felt the old ache in the pit of my stomach, but I also felt a foundation beneath my feet that no betrayal could shake." "I know," I replied. "Thank you for saying it." We stood together, three women shaped by the same story, but no longer bound to the same tragedy. The evening unfolded with warmth. Mom asked Marcus about prototyping. Elise quizzed Zoe on marketing strategies, and I realized they weren't simply guests, but participants in the community I had chosen. Later, I took the stage for a closing talk. Lights dimmed, projector humming behind me, and I spoke of the power of design to heal divides between user and product, between sister and sister, between past and present. I shared how betrayal had taught me that safety built on manipulation collapses, while trust woven through honesty endures. When I finished, the applause rose like rolling thunder, and through the haze of gratitude, I spotted Mom and Elise rising to their feet, their faces softened by pride. I breathed deeply, letting the moment anchor itself in my memory. When the gallery emptied, I gathered my belongings and found them waiting outside under the glow of the marquee. Mom reached for my hand first, voice steady. "You've created something beautiful from our brokenness," she said. Elise nodded behind her tears in her eyes. Can we keep building together?" I held their gaze sober with the lessons of the past and hopeful for the days ahead. "Yes," I said, and meant it. With that single word, the last walls between us shifted. I walked them to their car, the cool night air humming with possibility, and returned to the gallery to turn off the lights. Alone among the empty benches and dark screens, I felt the gentle pulse of a life reclaimed, not defined by betrayal or by anyone else's design, but by the choices I'd made to heal, to create, and to love on my own terms. As I stepped outside, the stars wheeled overhead, and I whispered gratitude to the universe and to the girl who had dared to sketch her refuge in code. This was my reckoning and my beginning. Story 2. My family blocked me from the group chat during my wedding. Then I came across pictures of them on vacation in Hawaii. Caption the families that are now complete. I only sent one message. While it lasts, enjoy it. I removed my name from the family business that day. The payroll account was frozen. My dad received a call from the Internal Revenue Service a week later. He knocked on my door for 20 minutes that night. When I opened it, it wasn't just that they weren't there that surprised me. They blocked me from the family group chat at that precise moment on my wedding day. I recall waiting outside the location immediately following the ceremony. Everyone was making their way to the reception hall as the sun was lowering and the sky had a gentle golden hue. Emma was laughing with her bridesmaids about the wind catching her veil. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. When I looked, I saw that it said, "You have been removed from Smith Family Core." I had assumed it was another congratulations message. No context, no warning, simply gone. As if it were written in a foreign language, I gazed at the screen. My initial thought was that it was an error. Perhaps Caleb accidentally tapped something. Perhaps Dad was trying to change the group photo or mute notifications because he was confused. That group chat has existed for 8 years. Birthdays and holidays, news about the family business. Everything passed through it. However, when I attempted to open it, nothing. I couldn't get in. At that point, I became aware that they were absent. Their table was empty of chairs. As a result, the chairs were arranged precisely. Mark, Caleb, Mom, and Dad are all empty. The waiters were constantly checking for tardiness. Alan, my closest friend, asked if they were stuck in traffic. I simply shrugged. I did not want to spoil the night. The fact that they had RSVP'd more than once made matters worse. They had filled out the online form, texted to confirm again the previous month, and even discussed their attire. My mother went to great lengths to avoid conflict with the bridesmaids. Mark invited his girlfriend to attend. Yes, I replied. They weren't merely anticipated. The damn plan included them. Before taking family pictures, the photographer kept asking if we wanted to wait for them. I continued to put it off. Eventually, we simply left them out. During dinner, Jody asked in a whisper if there had been any interaction between us. I told her I had no idea. That was the reality. I didn't receive a response until the 3rd day of our honeymoon. Before going to our cabin rental, we were in Napa only for a few tastings. I opened Instagram to see Emma selecting a bottle, merely by habit. Then they appeared standing on a Maui beach. They are all 4 smiling, holding cocktails, and wearing matching floral prints. Even his father, who never takes pictures, had Mark's arm around him. The caption said that the family was now complete. I merely sat there. No passion, no tantrum, simply empty. 2 asides. At first, she remained silent. Simply place her hand over mine. I informed her that I had 1 item to send. From her phone, I launched WhatsApp. She typed 1 message while still in the group. While it lasts, enjoy it. I opened my laptop after that. Smith wrote, My dad wasn't the only one in logistics. I had been making it a reality for the past 6 years. I was the one who got us online, even though we were co-owners. Got the job at Walmart. Half of the logistics were automated. For transactions exceeding $10,000, I would configure the dual signature protocol. He had no idea how to use it. I deleted my name from the company registration after logging in. I put my shares in a holding pattern that resulted in their freezing. I also froze the payroll account, which is crucial. Withdrawals must be approved by me. That Friday was payroll due. I stayed out of the spotlight. Did not speak up. Let the quiet do the talking. I received a call from an unidentified number a week later. Didn't respond to Dad's CPA's voicemail. The IRS had apparently noticed some disparities, missing paperwork and 2 years' worth of unpaid state taxes, and the amusing part, they couldn't have produced half of the necessary financial records without me. Before I even got to the front door that night, I heard the knocking. 20 minutes straight. I took a while to respond. I held him up. He was standing there when I opened the door, looking red-faced and sweating as if he had been in hell. And what he said first, "What did you do?" For a few seconds, I allowed the silence to linger. He anticipated that I would recoil, defend myself, or perhaps even offer an apology. I simply waited while leaning against the doorframe. He moved forward as if he were going to enter. I remained motionless. The payroll was frozen by you. Are you aware of your actions? I gave a nod. Yes, I am fully aware of my actions. He would get somewhere if he continued to talk like that. Claimed that the drivers threatened to walk. That was already in the warehouse crew's possession. Penalties for missing deadlines were demanded by 2 clients. Claimed that because my credentials were linked to the online reporting, the accountant was unable to even file. The one thing he believed would shake me was then dropped. This morning the IRS called. 5 years' worth of returns are being examined. 5. They believe we have been concealing our earnings. If this isn't fixed, we're all going to collapse. That word struck a different chord. We're all falling. I reminded him that the one guy they excluded from the family chat on his wedding day was not included in this. Apparently, that included everyone who could travel to Hawaii and pretend I didn't exist while grinning for the camera. He attempted to explain that it was simply a bad moment and that they needed space and that it wasn't personal. My wedding gave you the space you needed. That momentarily silenced him. He quickly changed to anger, claimed that I was being childish petty and discarding everything we had worked so hard to build. Then he took a folded piece of paper out of his jacket. After weighing it once, he threw it between us on the floor. I signed sheet the same document as 3 years ago, and it was a copy. I had forgotten a clause that was hidden in the early partnership filings. Under certain circumstances, it granted him some partial authority to override financial freezes. However, those requirements necessitated evidence of carelessness or deliberate injury. He was going to accuse me of undermining the business, that I did it maliciously. Even though he was bluffing, it was enough to keep the days that followed interesting. His attorney sent a cease and desist letter by Monday. I had responded to mine by Tuesday with a thorough audit of all the financial decisions I had made since joining, including the ones I had flagged over the years, all of which I had screenshots of, and several of which had verged on tax fraud. I kept most of it from Emma. Although she was aware of the outline, I spared her the anxiety. Before my family's chaos spilt into our new life, I wanted her to have at least a few days of peace after we returned from our honeymoon. For the first time in 2 months, Mom texted on Wednesday. Could we please have a conversation? This is becoming unmanageable. No explanation, no apology. A tiny, delicate olive branch tossed like a discarded tissue. The situation changed by Thursday when the CPA began contacting me directly, even though I didn't reply. Stated quietly that the IRS was investigating more than just the company. They were investigating Caleb, a phony vendor, offshore accounts, and Dad's personal finances. The IRS wasn't merely snooping, they were hunting. And I still hadn't done a single thing. Emma and I were wrapping up our lunch when the call came in. For the first time since the wedding, we had been organizing thank you notes at the dinner table. Things seemed to be starting to calm down. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while we were making jokes about who had the worst handwriting. I took a step back and replied. Richard was the one, a CPA, the family business, and a man I had only spoken to twice in 6 years, and only when something was amiss. He wasted no time. Listen, David, you should be aware of what's going on, even though I know you're no longer involved. He spoke in a sharp click. I didn't even inquire about how he obtained my number. I simply listened. As it happens, the payroll account did more than just bounce a few paychecks when I froze it. It interrupted a mid-transfer transaction that the bank's compliance team had flagged for audit. The account belonged to a shell company that purportedly maintained fleet software. However, that vendor was non-existent. The vendor's founding documents listed the address as a mailbox store in Nevada. Caleb. At that point, everything began to make sense. Why did Caleb always participate in the business in such a casual manner? Why he never had to describe his actual actions? How bad is it? I asked Richard. After a brief silence, he stated that the IRS had now referred the matter to a criminal investigator. They examined every transaction over the previous 5 years, not just one. My father had used my digital signature on a number of documents that I hadn't even seen, and it seems that my withdrawal had revealed the chain of irregularities. Fake invoices, inflated contracts, and unreported foreign income. I sat with it for a while after hanging up. I could have left at that moment, see them burn. However, I was still in charge of the backup server, which I had configured for complete financial transparency. It contained all of my emails, contract, invoices, and approvals, and nobody could access it without my password. I simply locked the system remotely. I didn't even need to remove anything. Emma asked if there was a problem when she noticed me working. I informed her that there was no point in trying to fix it at this time. I received a text from a Jody later that night. The IRS called again and said, "Your dad is in a spiral. Caleb hasn't had any sleep. Your mother is going crazy." It was not gratifying, not just yet. It seemed inevitable. Then I heard a knock at about 9 o'clock at night. Before I looked, I knew it was him. Dad was standing there. The same outfit as last week. His hair was unkempt, as if he had spent the entire day rubbing it through. I didn't have to invite him inside before he accepted. A thick envelope was just thrust into my chest. "Go through it. In all of this, you are not innocent. Right here." I remained at the door and slowly opened it. There were printed emails with excerpts of correspondence from 2 years ago between me and a logistics client. I recall that transaction, though, because my name was on the approval line of a big shipment contract. A standard delivery quote was approved by me. He was the one who later changed the invoice to conceal excess money and inflate the delivery cost. If the IRS sees those emails out of context, they won't just come after me, he said, leaning in. They will also pursue me. He believed that I would drop everything because I would be afraid. Unfreeze the accounts, log back in, and assist them in cleaning up the mess. Not even blinking. I wish you luck in that endeavor. I said, "You changed those figures." "Not me." His voice changed. After attempting to persuade me, he said that we could clean it up together if I returned right away. Claimed that they erred by skipping the wedding and that it is still a family business. However, we can get past that. He had never even brought it up before. Andy believed that was sufficient. All of this would be resolved if he made a passing reference to leaving me on the most significant day of my life. I simply gave a headshake. "That bridge was destroyed by you. You're angry now. The fire is getting bigger." He remained motionless for an additional moment, as if he had something more to say. He turned and proceeded down the driveway after that. I locked the door after closing it. Not to be safe, to illustrate a point. Our former legal counsel sent me an email the following morning. It seems that my dad was attempting to raise liquid cash by selling company shares to a third party in a panic sale, but he was unsuccessful. Every significant asset still had my name attached to it, and the investigation was now as well. I anticipated repercussions, irate texts, threats, and perhaps even a last-ditch voicemail from my mother attempting to mend things. Hearing from someone I hadn't spoken to in more than 10 years was unexpected. I received an email on Friday morning from someone I hadn't seen since high school. My dad's estranged younger brother is Uncle Grant. When I was still in college, he had been forced out of the company. I was always told that he caused issues with the board and mismanaged funds. He sent a brief email. I heard what was going on. I waited for someone to notice it at last. "Meet me if you want the full picture. Everything is mine." At first, I didn't respond. I had no idea how to interpret it. Emma insisted that I go, stated that perhaps knowing what I was truly up against would be helpful at the very least. So I went to a diner 2 towns over and met him. He didn't appear resentful, but he did look older than I remembered, simply exhausted. Before our coffee had even arrived, he slid a manila folder across the table. Copies of old bank transfers emails, and one document in particular that made my stomach turn were all inside. It had to do with agreement, day-to-day 8 years ago with Uncle Grant's and my dad's signature. The rationale behind the acquisition: not poor management, silence, not failure. Uncle Grant had reportedly learnt that Dad and Caleb had been using surplus warehouse lease income to fund a side venture, a private shell company operating under Mom's name that purchased and sold commercial trucks at exorbitant prices, primarily to our own business. The scam was full circle, draining the company's resources while enriching themselves. Grant would disappear and never talk about it again after learning that it offered him a payout on one condition. He kept the documents in case something went wrong, but he accepted the deal. Now that the walls were closing in and the IRS was circling, he thought it was time for someone else to find out. I took it all. I scanned it, twice backed it up. I thanked him and walked away. The following day, I received a request from Smith and Rose's legal team to attend a mediation call immediately. They wanted to get everything settled as soon as possible, offer me a discreet buyout of all my shares in return for granting me access to the servers and locked accounts. I didn't pay attention to the message. That same afternoon, Emma came home with news of her own. While shopping downtown, she ran into one of the warehouse workers, Diego, a guy who'd been with the company since I joined. He told her something strange. Apparently, my dad had told the employees that I was the reason no one was getting paid, that I'd sabotaged the system. After a fight with my brothers, he was trying to turn them against me, said I was bitter and unstable. I didn't even get mad. I just laughed because by Sunday something happened that none of them expected. The IRS didn't just freeze the business accounts, they froze the personal ones too. My dad's, my mom's, and Caleb's, all pending formal investigation. No access, no transfers, no warnings. Emma and I were having dinner when I got the alert. All three of them were on a list of financial holds issued as part of the wider fraud probe. They were locked out of their money. Everything. I set my foot down, leaned back, and smiled. The house of cards wasn't just falling now. It had collapsed. Monday morning, I woke up to 33 missed calls, 9 from that 10 from Mom. The rest split between Mark and Caleb. Not a single voicemail, just silent panic. By noon, I had received 2 emails from the IRS requesting copies of the backup financial records, specifically the archived correspondence contracts and vendor activity that only I could access. I didn't respond yet. I wanted them to sweat. That evening, I got an unexpected knock. Emma checked the people first. It was my mother. I hadn't seen her since Christmas 2 years ago. She always preferred to play the quiet partner in family disasters, passive smiling, never directly responsible. But this time, she was the one standing on our doorstep, gripping her purse like it was the last stable thing in her life. She asked to come in. Emma left the room. We sat in silence for a few seconds, and then she launched into a rehearsed apology. She said she didn't know the full story, that she never agreed to skip the wedding, that Dad had convinced her it would be less tense if they just went away for the weekend. She insisted she tried to call. I told her she could have tried harder, told her I'd seen the group photo, the one with the caption about the family finally being whole. She shifted gears fast, said they were in trouble, that the IRS freeze meant they couldn't pay their mortgage, their credit cards, even their groceries. She said Dad was falling apart, that Caleb had a breakdown, and that the company would be destroyed if I didn't help with everything we had built over the years. She then said something that chilled me to the bone. We are aware that there is an emergency fund. I went cold. Emma and I had arranged for that years ago. A different investment account that is in my name, bound by a trust, not even in the company's operations. We did not record it. Few people were aware of its existence. How I inquired. She paused. It's possible that your father took some bank records from when you two had joint authority. He believes that funds ought to be reinvested in the company. Without the company, you would not have had it. She spoke as though it made sense, as if she thought it was true. I got to my feet. I don't give a damn about his opinion. We own that money. On my wedding day, you all abandoned me. I owe you nothing, she pleaded, said the words literally. Please. She then made one final attempt at a card. Your dad is going to go public if you don't help. Let's say you planned this and manipulated the books, I chuckled. She winced. They wanted to drag me down with them as they were cornered and drowning. I assured her that I had no plans to halt the inquiry, that I was only holding off on sending the IRS the entire archive because I wanted to see how far they would go. After a moment of stunned silence, she walked away without saying anything more. I turned in all of the emails, backup files, transaction logs, and Uncle Grant's paperwork the following morning. After shutting down the laptop, I took Emma to brunch. Allow them to burn. The investigation officially began 3 days after I sent the archive to the IRS. I was informed that it made the news by Emma. Due to years of tax evasion, a family-owned goods company is currently under federal audit. No names were given, but anyone in the area who knew the Smiths could figure it out. Friends began sending each other texts. Some of my former coworkers contacted me, some in disbelief, some simply to say they always sensed something wasn't right. My father sent me the last message I had ever read that evening. It was a screen grab of a court document written by his lawyer, in which he accused me of violating a fiduciary duty, causing harm to the business, and putting the whole family under financial and emotional strain. He threatened to file a civil lawsuit if I didn't remove the documents. The number was blocked by me, without hesitation. I then deleted my name, email profile, and everything else, after logging into the company portal, which was one of the few things that was still operational. Not in retaliation, not with malice, merely because the moment had come. A few hours later, Mark attempted to call. This time he left a voicemail, claimed that I had overreached, claimed that I ought to have dealt with this within the family. I misunderstood the situation, and we could have had a conversation, according to a paragraph that Caleb sent me via email. It's funny. On my wedding day, nobody wanted to talk. All of them failed to appear, not a single message. However, they discovered their voices when their house was being audited, and their accounts were frozen. I didn't respond. They all made decisions. I broke off all communication. I wasn't spiteful when I blocked them. I simply didn't want their poison to continue seeping into the things Emma and I had created. 3 months later, we relocated out of state. The town is clean now. The emergency fund was left unaltered. I resumed private consultations. Emma returned to her teaching. Jody and a few other family members kept in touch, and our life became calm, steady, and genuine. When we got together for dinner, some of our wedding friends would still bring it up. How my family did something that no one could believe. How foolish it was to put a vacation ahead of the wedding of their own son. They only care about control, and when they lose it, they lose everything according to the consensus of all. It has now been almost a year. I still occasionally receive unsolicited letters from law firms or distant cousins who are trying to catch up. I disregard them. I have a new rhythm and a new home with Emma. Now we discuss children. We take trips when we feel like it. I never imagined that we would laugh as much as we do. I have lost my anger. Just finished. I occasionally tell the truth when someone asks if I miss them. I miss the person I believed them to be. However, that version never appeared. Not when it was important. And I won't now either. 6 days after I had assumed that everything was behind me, I received an email that completely stopped me cold. It wasn't a notice. It was from the IRS, not a request. I'm grateful. In a formal statement, one of the case's senior agents acknowledged the importance of the information I supplied. I didn't anticipate it. It stated that several offshore accounts connected to fraudulent vendor payments, not just in my dad's name, had been found as a result of the backup records I submitted. Other colleagues were present, a few of whose names I knew from previous business gatherings. The email ended with something unexpected, even though 2 of them had already left the country. Based on the records, we will be sending out a subpoena for testimony. Although we think you were not aware of these activities, your cooperation could help us develop the case more broadly. That line caught my attention twice. My dad was no longer the only focus of this. This was larger. Emma discovered something in the mail later that afternoon. A heavy envelope. It was delivered by hand, but there was no return address. No label, no stamp. There were 2 items inside, a flash drive and a letter from Caleb. His letter was apologetic rambling and at times desperate. He claimed that Dad had lost his mind, that he was attempting to place the blame on anyone he could, and that he had coerced Caleb into creating the phony vendor accounts, about which Mom knew more than she admitted, but kept quiet out of fear of losing everything. He apologized for what transpired at the wedding and stated that he didn't want to go down with them. He was aware that I would never forgive him. However, I might eventually come to understand if the flash drive helped to balance things out. I connected it to a disposable laptop. It contained spreadsheets, voice memos, internal emails, and even a few videos. In one of them, the father was laughing while speaking with someone in another country about how the child signs everything I put in front of him. I was that person. Another showed him describing to Caleb how to avoid banking thresholds by dividing vendor payments into smaller batches. It was sealed. I sent a brief message with all of this information to the IRS contact. Another present. Emma and I sat on the porch that evening. We said very little. Just observed the rolling breeze and the darkening sky. And I came to a realization. This was no longer retaliation. It was taking something away. A last cleaning out of everything that attempted to ruin what ought to have been my greatest day ever. Into a betrayed memory. It was just over now. And for good this time.